Okay, so I'm going to show you this. So I'm only using red and orange and green in combination of those colors. And the green sometimes is more of a lime green, sometimes more of a darker green. And you can even see how it's drying. So voila, I'm gonna run it again, just because it's so fast. So it's just a little bird that I painted, and I've done this class actually as part of my series of free classes that I taught during the springtime. But I like to show it because with watercolor you can do a lot of things. All right, so now that we have seen this, I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to spotlight my iPad so that you guys can see my book here. You can see my book, and we're going to do a drawing of this. Now, I'm going to do the drawing in my book because I want to do it very dark so you can see it. I suggest to Betty and Margie, I suggest you do your drawing right on your watercolor paper. Okay, the watercolor paper is probably, I suggest a 9x12 if this is the size that you have, or whichever size watercolor paper you have. So I've prepared one right here that I will use when it's time to paint. So I'm doing the drawing here. I will walk you through the steps of the drawing, and meanwhile you can draw it onto your watercolor paper. Okay, so this is my book, and you can see the subject matter right here behind my book. So this is what we're going to follow, and we're going to do a simple version of this drawing, starting with the horizon line. So the horizon line should not be right here in the middle. It should be like 1/4 up or 1/3 up from the bottom of the page. So right here, and we want to have a nice curve, like there are rocks here. So going like this. And then the other could start from here and go up a little bit like this. So now this is the first step. So Betty and Margie, this is what you should be doing. And don't make it too dark because you want to do a very light pencil drawing onto your watercolor paper. And then when you paint it, then these lines will disappear. Okay, the next step is we want to give the little hat some shape. See, this is not a straight line. It's like a little frown on the front and a little smile on the back of it that's behind the cone. So first we're going to change the straight line into like a frown here, like so. So I'm going to put it like this. So this here, you just can put like a little dot right here in the middle, and you want to have a little frown that goes through the dot. Once you've done that, then you can erase the straight line that was at the bottom of your triangle. Okay, so try that. Now that we have put the frown on the front, we're going to put the smile on the back, but the smile is behind the cone, so it only appears on either side. So one here and one here, like this. So it looks like it's a little hat on top of the cone. That's round. So you can just add a little round, like if there's a little ball or something. Sometimes there's a weather vane, so you could be creative here. Just a little something on top. And now we are going to move on to the house. So the house, I'm going to put that here. So the house is basically a square that we're going to put like this. And then after that, we're going to add the roof. So the square, the house is not really tall, so you don't want to go too high. So just a couple of inches from where the rocks or the horizon line is. So you want to put a straight line that's completely horizontal. Oh, mine is going down a little bit. Sorry about that. This will be better. Okay. And then a line that goes completely vertical going down. So like this. So this is the first step. When you're done, give me the thumb up, and then we'll add the roof. So we're going to put a roof on this house. Now the roof should be a lot less high than the house. So I can see here, the roof is a lot skinnier than the height of the house. So the way that I suggest you do the roof, like so. So you have your completely horizontal line here. The top of the roof is also completely horizontal. This goes like this. And then this here, this line will continue a little bit beyond the vertical line. And then you group the two. So this way, the roof has an overhang, you see? That's how you do it. So do you have any questions on this? So prepare the indigo, the purple, the magenta, and the red. I'll give you, maybe I'll give you 5 or 10 minutes to do that.
Yeah, the indigo, the 3 purples and the red. Okay.
It's actually indigo, purple, magenta, and red.
Yes.
But I know what you mean when you say the 3 purples, because they're kind of like all leaning towards the purple.
But it's what the blue.
So it's the same drawing that you guys did. You can see the little hat, then the little house, and you know the line of the rocks. So we're gonna paint this. This has a little bit more detail, but the simple drawing that we did is sufficient to start our painting. And the first part that we're going to paint is the sky. So the sky is lighter here at the bottom than it is at the top. And to paint the sky, we're going to first wet the whole sky, and then after that, we're going to paint it. Now to do this, I recommend that you use a large brush. So I'm going to use this brush that's quite large, and it also has a point, like a very thin tip, so I can go into detail if I need to. And to paint this, so my lighthouse, the top of the lighthouse is here. So I'm going to turn it upside down. I turned it upside down. I put it inclined. I'm going to wet all of this, working very quickly. Then I'm going to paint it with my indigo. Now, you can watch the demonstration first. Then I will give you time to paint this section. Okay, so you don't have to do it at the same time as me, if you prefer to wait. So I'm using a lot of water, and I'm going right to the edge of the rock and right to the edge of the lighthouse, like so. So I'm wetting this whole section and using a lot of water. right to the edge of the little hat, around my little ball that I put on top of the hat. And I can also move it this way, going around the little ball, all the way to the edge of the hat. Might drip a little bit, but that's okay. You have it upside down or sideways, so it's not a big deal. All the way to the edge of the lighthouse. Top of the roof of the house, like so. Sideways here. Oh, I have water, so much water it accumulates there. And here, this is with the rocks, the edge of the rocks, and then the side of the house, the roof, and now it's all wet. And now I'm going to put it this way, and I'm going to dip completely into my indigo, like so. And because I have a lot of paint right now, I'm going to start here at the top with my paint color. Look how dark and rich it is. Go around my little ball. All right, now I'm going to use some water because I don't necessarily want it to be this dark all the way to the top. Wow, it's going to be very dramatic. So I'm removing some of the paint now. Ooh, nice. All right. So I've done this side. I want to do this side too. Don't want to have too much pigment. That's why I wet my brush now. Could I add? Is there a question? Yes, Betty, what's your question? You have to unmute yourself. Otherwise, I won't hear you. What's your question? You're still on mute.
Did you erase all the pencil marks
No,
when you were doing that? No, okay.
I didn't erase them because they were very, very light.
Yeah.
And so therefore, when I paint, they will disappear. So there. Now I have painted. Oh, there's a lot of pigment here. So now I've painted this, and I have to let it dry. And I'm going to let it dry upside down so that the darks accumulate at the top. But you can see it's going to be very dramatic sky. And if you want to add some clouds while it's still wet, so you have to clean your brush completely. And you can remove a little bit of the pigment and make it like a cloud while it's still wet. So there. Now I'm going to put the recording on pause, and you can I'll give you a little time to paint it. All right, so now I want to show you because my painting had time to dry. And now you can see how, see right here, it's dark, but not all dark. And then, you know, there are lines, and up here, there's a spot. But this is what watercolor is about. It's very hard to control exactly the medium, because when you paint, it looks a certain way, and then when it dries, it will dry in its own way that you cannot control. So with watercolor, that's part of the pleasure of painting with this medium, as well as its challenge. So now that we have painted our beautiful sky, we're going to paint the rocks at the bottom. And to paint the rocks at the bottom, so I'm going to show you the example. So in my example, you can tell I have some nice, beautiful magenta and some nice purple all mixed together with a lot of pigment. Now, the rocks are here, and here at the very bottom, it's good to leave a little bit of white, because that's the water. It's the water and the crashing waves that are foaming, like right here and right here. So this is why when painting the rocks, I'm not going to cover the bottom part. I'm going to leave some whites. And then once this is dry, then afterwards, I'm going to add some light blue, okay, at the bottom. So first we're going to paint the beautiful rocks. To paint the beautiful rocks, I'm going to use some purple and some magenta mostly, but you can use the magenta, the purple, the indigo, all mixed together. So let me demonstrate. My rock is right here. So I'm gonna wet. So first, completely clean my brush. Okay, pretty clean. So now I'm gonna wet this portion all the way to the edge, in here as well. But not all the way to the bottom, because I don't want to wet the area that I'm gonna save as my water. Now I'm gonna dip my brush into the purple. This is my purple right here. And put it on here. Give a nice movement of the rock. Wow, it's nice. And now I'm dipping into the magenta to vary a little bit the color. I can also use some indigo if I want to. And I didn't clean my brush in between because I want to kind of have this all mixed together. Look at this, nice. So purple, indigo, magenta. See, it's running here because it's wet. And having the edge be, you know, not completely straight is not a bad idea. So now it's running down here, which I like. I'm adding a little bit of my magenta, my indigo here that has a lot of pigment to kind of create like there is another rock in front of the original rock. And maybe a little bit of over here. There, so it looks like there is a rock here. So rock formations are uneven and beautiful. So now this is what I have, and I'm gonna let it dry like this. So here at the bottom, I have these white areas. This is where the water will be. And at this time, I'm gonna let this dry. And I'm gonna let it dry flat actually, because I don't want it to run too much. Now, your turn.
No, I had to let it. No, you don't have to let it dry.
Oh, doesn't look like anything like mine.
And that's okay, because this one doesn't look anything like this one either. Every time I paint this painting, it turns out different. So at this time, now we have painted the rocks and we've painted the whole sky. The rocks, the color of these rocks is very similar to the color of the roof. So I think that we could paint the roof, but we can also, there's also the little hat that could be the same color as the rocks. So I think that's what we're going to do. We are going to paint the roof, that this little hat, we're going to paint this with the colors that we have in the rocks, because we want to have a nice dark roof. However, the light comes from here. See how this part of the lighthouse is lit up, and this part of the roof of the lighthouse is also lit up. So this whole section is a section that was never painted. It's the white of the paper. Whereas, and same here, whereas this section has been painted, and so has this. So we're going to paint this little top roof. So we only paint above the frown, only above the frown, and we're going to paint this. So this is how we're going to do this. Using a small brush this time. I'm going to use my small brush. Actually, this one is very small. Maybe I'll use this one. So you can use this like a round brush like this, or an even smaller one like this one. If you only have the one big brush, you can also paint with this because it has a very a tip that is very thin. But since I have the option, I'm going to use this one. And I'm going to first wet my little hat. Now I don't want to wet this section. This is the section where the light hits. So I only want to wet this section. So I wet it like this. I only wet above the frown. So if I put it close, I pick up a little excess water with my brush. Don't want to have too much. So if I put it close, I don't know if this is going to be visible. Can't really see where it's wet. Okay, but anyway, I've wet this area of it, this area. I did not wet this area, and I only wet above the frown. Now I'm going to use this and use some of the colors that I put here. So I think I'm going to go with my purple. And my purple is very pigmenty. So I'm going to remove some of the pigment and go here in the shadow. All the way along. Also in this ball on this side. And now clean my brush almost, not completely, and continue painting where I have water. There we go. So now I get this. See how there's no paint on this side? So it goes dark on this side, and then as it comes around, I clean my brush to do the middle part. Now you try. So there are two little parts to the hat that we haven't done yet, and they're very important to do so that it really looks like it's under. So this little hat here on top of the cone, it's got these two little sections here and here. And these show that it's under. So it's important to make them very dark. So a nice deep purple or a nice deep indigo is good to put here. So what I do is to paint this, I clean my brush and I remove the water from the brush on my paper towel like this. Once it's pretty dry, then I'm going to dip it in a little bit of indigo. And I'm just going to paint this little area here like this. So without wetting first, just going to go like this. And I paint this little area. And then I'm going to paint the other area here. Same thing. Sorry, my phone's ringing. So once these are painted, you want to let them dry. So see, now it looks like a little hat. So once you have done these two with the same dark color, we're going to paint the roof of the house. So the roof of the house, because it's such a small section, you don't have to pre-wet it. And it can be either purple or magenta, like you can use some of the colors that you have in your rocks or the color that you use to paint the little hat here. So in my case, I used purple to paint the little hat, so I'm going to use the same color to paint this. And without wetting the section of the roof, I'm going to use some nice purple, dip my brush into the purple, and I paint this quickly, like so. And I'm going to turn it upside down. Make sure that I follow this line. Voila. And I'm going to add a little chimney right here. We didn't draw it, but chimney is just a thing like this. And now I have my roof painted. Very dark roof, actually. Maybe it's a little too dark, but oh well. Let's just imagine it's almost dark, like almost black. Now that we have painted the roof, we are going to paint the side of the cone, this one. So we're going to paint the side of the lighthouse. Now this side of the lighthouse is where the light hits this way. And so therefore, we're not going to put any water here. We're going to put some water here and start here with a slightly light. It's going to be a light purple that we're going to use. And then as we come around, we're going to put more and more water, a little bit like we did on this to give the idea that it's round like this. And under here, we're going to put more pigment because that's in the shadow like this. So this is what we're going to do. Once this is painted, I'm going to wet this house and also paint this. But let's do this first. And to do this, you need a watery kind of color. Now, I'm going to put it this way because I want to be able to wet this to the edge. And I'm not going to wet this. Just going to wet this part. I can take my large brush, this one. I'm going to clean it. And I'm going to wet this. Not too wet. So I'm going to wet this like so. In one go. All the way to the edge. Do not leave white. And all the way here, like so. So now I have wet this section, not this part, only the left part. And using the same brush, the big one, I think I'm going to use my, I'm thinking maybe I'm going to use a little bit of the indigo. And it's got to be very watery. So after I dipped it, then, you know, I water it down a little bit here like this. I can see it's very watered down. And I'm going to paint this. So I just go in one swoop. All the way to the edge. And here at the top, it's all the way across because we have a shadow. Goes like this. I think it's not quite pigmenty enough. So I'm going to dip into even more, like some purple. And go to the edge here with my purple. Like so. And once I've done this, now I'm going to put it flat on the table because now I want to add more pigment with my, so I don't want to have too much water in my brush, and I want to have more pigment and do under here so that it looks like it's really shadowy under here. Like so. There. And then I let it dry. So you can see where it looks like close by. Now the house is very light in color. So doing it using a very watered down version of our indigo. It's good for the house. And then under the roof line where there's a shadow, we can put a little bit of additional purple. So dipping into my purple. just so it looks like there's a shadow here. All right, so those who have to leave, because we're already 4:30, I understand. We just have a few minute detail to add still. So if you want to stay, you're welcome to stay.
Oh my God, it's 4:30. Look at this and I can do purple again.
I painted the house too. So a good quality brush will usually have, will usually have enough here so that when you put it in the water, it will gather a lot of paint on it, and will have a very fine tip so that if you want to do something very fine with it, then you can. Even so, this would be a round brush because the ferrule is round. And another example of it, this is a filbert,
Oh,
because
yeah.
the ferrule is
Wow.
flat on one side, and this brush has a nice tip at the end so that I can do something very fine with this. I can still paint the sky because this will gather a lot of large body of water. So this.
Now, do you buy your brushes on Dick Blick?
These ones I bought at Michael's. They're Royal and Langnickel Zen. And
Oh, yeah.
they
Seen
came in a
those, yeah.
pack and they're pretty good. This one here is a large brush. It's called a mop. And it's for painting a large area that doesn't have any sharp edge. And it will gather a lot of paint and a lot of water.
Which we'll be moving towards eventually.
Yes.
Beginner 101.
Now, if you are talking about
Acrylic.
brushes for acrylic, so brushes for acrylic, I like to buy the Princeton and Newton.
Yeah.
For some reason, I've gone towards them. They're synthetic, and I really like painting with flat brushes or filbert, so that's
Yeah.
what I tend to buy.
Okay.
But it becomes a question of, of preference. If you prefer to paint with the one shape brush or another shape brush.
Yeah, I'm getting used to that now a little bit more than I'm painting.
Recording. So now all that remains to be done is to put the door on this one, the two little windows, to paint our water here at the bottom, and perhaps we can put a few windows on here. We don't necessarily have to do the little balcony because we're running so late. But if you ever wanted to do this, you can look at this one and just do the same thing. But all lighthouses don't necessarily have the little balcony, so it's not an absolute must. So now I'm going to do the water here at the bottom. So remember, the water is coming down towards those rocks, crashing those rocks and creating some foam here. So the water is not necessarily touching all the rocks everywhere. And so I am going to use my medium size brush to do this. And I'm going to use a very watery down indigo color. And I'm just going to put some here like this. Now I'm going to use a little bit more water. And I'm not trying to make this like completely even. So you can see here. So I'm putting some color, dipping my brush into the water and just going like this. So in some areas, maybe it's touching the rocks. In some other areas, maybe it's not touching the rocks. So it's very subtle, the water in the foam. And using some of my deep purple with a dry brush, I'm going to paint my door and windows. So the same way we did the roof. So I'm going to put a door here. We didn't draw it, but this is just a simple little rectangle. Like so.
Yeah.
I need to turn it upside down so I can do this better. And using the purple again, I'm going to put 2 little windows. And another little window. Windows are usually the same size. So now I have the windows, same thing with the little little chimney, and still using the purple and dry brush. I'm going to put some windows on here. So the windows on the lighthouse are very much, they're just like little slits. So I'm just going to go like this. Yeah, maybe there is one in the middle. Maybe there's one right here. And maybe there's another one, little one here. Who knows? It's always curious where the windows are. So now I've put some windows onto my lighthouse, and I've put the windows onto the house next to the lighthouse. I've painted the water at the bottom with a very light, it looks like a very light gray. It's basically watered down indigo. And drawing my my brush, I can also try to intensify the wave crashing by removing some of the pigment in those rocks here at the bottom, like so. And see, now it looks like we have like some wave crashing here. That's what I did. Whoops, sorry, like so. So this is the full lighthouse that we painted today. You like my bird?